on emergency matters to please come forward. And as Renee does that, good evening, everyone. My name is Mwaku Clement Manuku. I am from the Northwest University. I've been delegated to run a few things here, but Mr. Matlangu is the main man on this program directing, as you can see. And let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of the Northwest University Convocation Exco. We have, of course, in our midst the chairperson of council, Mr. Bert Sortdracher. We have the president of the convocation, Mr. Tom, the Mr. Bonang Matlangu, another member of the Convocation Exco, and as I said, he is the champion here today. Mr. Tutu Khobane, who is also the member of Convocation Exco. Prof. Fika Janse van Rensbeck, another member of the Convocation Exco. We organize these events to ensure that our alumni and convocation members network, but more than anything, get to share ideas not only amongst themselves, but from other leaders across the sectors, public sector, private sector. And today, of course, we are blessed, fortunate, privileged to have Prof. Mohale as our knowledge sharing agent of for today. And yes, from the university leadership, we have Prof. Mala. Prof. Mala, you are also acknowledged, and others. Thank you very much for coming. We have to comply with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and at that, I'm going to ask our hosts to guide us where to run, not to run, to walk whenever there are issues that we need to respond to. Please, you can just, in a minute or so, guide us.
Okay, good evening all, and thank you for choosing us as the Capital Hotel in Sandton. My name is Benny. I am the conference manager. Please allow me to run you through a brief safety culture of this property. All our conference rooms are situated on the ground floor. The bathrooms are also situated in front of the bar. I'm sure no one will miss it because they are in front of the bar. Our emergency detector system is linked to our main panel. So should it happen that, which we're not expecting, there is any emergency, the system will go off and the alarm will also go off. Please stay calm. Our well-trained marshal will come and usher you to our assembly point, which is situated in front of the hotel. One more thing. As you have seen on arrival, our security check is done thorough. When arriving and on exit as well, they will require you to produce your driver's license or an ID. There is no ticket system. Most people will panic when they search themselves and can't find the ticket. We're also linked to the Sandton police station. We work very close with them. In addition, we also have an armed response, which is very quick in their response. In less than 5 minutes, they will be here should something happen. In case someone misplaces something or lose something, please feel free to go to reception and report it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Shall we uh, go back to the Northwest University to sing the anthem that some of you have been part of for a number of years? Shall we do that, please? If you don't mind, you can stand up.
Bogoni bupirima reka ele murena kawena reka ema ratswarana murena uri khoche lisedin re Waar die wilgers welig spruit, doringboom sy skadu sprei, soos ons groei in kundigheid, mag U ons lei. Sien ons hoe hier lei met die hand, laat U sien rus oor ons land. Three strong streams united flow, Africa stands proud and tall. As we learn, we trust, we know God is in control. Bless us, O Lord, guide us with grace. May Northwest be blessed always. Bless us, O Lord, sien ons hier. Ore Jehovah Zemporena, sien ons, bless us, O Lord.
Thank you very much. Lift as you rise, speeches and thoughts on leadership. That's the book by Prof. Bonang Mohale. And I take it you have bought the book. There are no books here today to be given as gifts or anything like that. Am I right, Prof? But you can bring that book for signing and so on. If you are empowered, you are still a passive recipient of power. But if you are emancipated, you are an active participant in creating power. One is finite and the other has limitless opportunities. If we don't do the things we are born to do, the things we are able to do, and the things that are right to do, we deprive ourselves of the true joy that one gets from the absolute triumph of having helped another human being. These are just some of that extracts that are there in the book that you are going to buy from here. Thank you very much, Mr. Matlangu. I think this is your time to welcome us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manuku. I have a responsibility. Greetings, all. I have a responsibility to welcome our guests and introduce the topic and introduce our guest speaker. The only thing I'm worried about is that English doesn't fail me today. There was a time it failed me on TV. It was very embarrassing because you have the thoughts, but you can't articulate them. And unfortunately, you can't speak Isindebele. So, to greet our guests, I will start with our guest of honor, Professor Bonang Mohale. I've also read the book. I've not bought it. I found it somewhere. I'm not encouraging former students. You know how to use to find textbooks. So you can find the book that way, but you must buy it and stimulate the economy. And what I gather from the book, as I acknowledge the guests, and there are those extracts, but I also get at other things as well, which I found to be interesting. That Professor Bonang Mohale was born in Old Etwato, that's east of Eguruleni or east of Johannesburg, Israel. And that's where I am based in Gauteng. And would have grown up in Katlehong, another section of Eguruleni, and would have went back to Etwato, what Davidton, extension 3, and then would have moved to, if you know Davidton, you know extension 3 is upper than Etwato, it's Apanyana, than Etwato. And then he moved then to Ebinoni, a suburb of Benoni, or a township using planning language called Rhinefield. That is now upper than Extension 3. And then he moved to Bedford View. I think a lot of you are familiar with Bedford View. Now that is upper. You can see this ladder is rising. And then I would assume moved out of the city, which we hope he would come back one day. And then also another interesting thing that I found from the book is that Professor Bonang would have gotten married at 19, 17 years old. And he's still married to the same person, by the way. It's an interesting fact to state, since a lot of young people are always talking about how Mjolo is dealing with them, is processing them. So there's someone here at the age of 17 had identified a lifetime partner. I think that is something we can also learn from. So that's our keynote speaker today. I just thought I should state those things and greet our chairperson of council, Mr. Bert Sortracher, other council members, Prof, and if there are any other, they are greeted as well. Greet Mr. Nkosnati Tom, who's our acting president in the Convocation Executive. I know Mr. Manok would have said, and other Convocation Executive members. And greet the Convocation, because it is the very same people that would have put us in these positions of privilege. Greet Professor Chalufu, Spusiso Chalufu, DVC, and also Executive Director of Student Life at the Northwest University. Currently is responsible for the Van der Bijl Oval campus of the Northwest University. Greet Mr. Clement Manoko, that's our Executive Director, Corporate Communications. These are the people that assist us as Convocation, as alumni, to be able to execute such events. Without them, we won't be able, would be irrelevant, and would be accused of being useless. So they play a critical role in ensuring that we achieve what we need to achieve. And your team as well. The Prof Mala, and Prof Mala didn't want to sit where she's seated right now. I don't know why, but you are greeted, Prof Mala Singh. Greet the alumni, students, staff, our internal, our external, our current and prospective stakeholders of the Northwest University. You are all greeted, and I'm happy to see that you made it in good health. And even though there will be the item of closing, but when you leave, you arrive at your end destinations in good health and in one piece. Now, just to get in briefly, with regards to the topic of today. So, those that were there, but even if you were not there, the Convocation Executive in the last triennial general meeting was given a mandate or a responsibility to take some action or develop programs and projects that speak to graduate unemployment and underemployment. Because you would know that oftentimes the focus is on unemployment. But some of you would know that you are employed, however, you are underemployed. We would go into the literature of underemployment as defined primarily by your International Labour Organization, but you are underemployed and you would wish to be fully employed. So then we then have to develop programs that speak to that. So there's been a lot of things that we would have done. The president would articulate them later. But it is important that to make mention that this program today is part and parcel of the many other initiatives that we would have brought to respond to that mandate or that responsibility that was given to this convocation executive, at least for our tenure. You would know that when we speak also about graduate unemployment in South Africa, we are not just speaking about numbers, statistics, but we are speaking about actual people. And there are so many elements to it in order when engaging the conversation, such as you would know that in South Africa today, when you read the scarce skills qualifications, scarce skills and scarce qualifications list, there are about 142 listed scarce skills and qualifications. In those 142 in South Africa today, some are, in fact, before I even get there, once a skill or qualification is on the list, it evokes a certain section in the Immigration Act, which means that the potential employer is then allowed to recruit from anywhere in the world. So that means that if you have that skill or qualification domestically, you are most likely now to compete with the foreign or people from the foreign labor market, which makes it even more difficult for you. So some of the things listed there, let's start maybe with the most basic ones. It is said on the list, South Africa has a shortage of call center operators, which I know some of you would find interesting because I think on a daily basis you get a call trying to sell you insurance, a cell phone deal. But apparently, according to that list, we have a deficit of that skill or qualification. We would know that we have a surplus. It says that managers of call centers are also in shortage. It says that there is a shortage of people with a master's, people who can do policy analysis, development, and so forth. I know some of you here seated in the room do have a master's, or you are busy with one, and you would have struggled also to get employment or to get fully employed. But according to the list, you are in short supply. But you would ask yourself, why am I then struggling to secure permanent employment? So it would also go on to mention other things such as a master's in economics that we are in short supply. I mention we because we have studied economics. But we struggle to also to access the domestic labor market, even with the training that would have received from various graduate programs, internships, and so forth. So I think by now you get that that list is not necessarily consistent with the lived reality of South Africans or graduates in particular. So then that means that a person with even that scarce skill is most likely not to enter the labor market or to enter it but be underemployed. So that's why we need to talk about these things to say then how do we then respond and respond adequately to that. Also, the Northwest University is a university that is trying to find solutions, not just for the Northwest as a province, because we also find existence in Gauteng, but primarily for the Northwest, for South Africa and for Africa in particular. When we talk at least about unemployment in the Northwest, you know, underemployment is not tracked by Statistics South Africa. They only track unemployment or employment, that binary. So you know that in the Northwest, it is quite interesting there because there's a phenomenon. I think it is the only province in the country when you use the expanded definition where there are more people unemployed than people employed. It's the only province. I think it's 51.2%. So that phenomenon is not experienced by the other 8 provinces. It only exists in that province. You would also know that the economy of that province would have grown by 0.3% in the last calendar year, by 0.5% in the year before that. And that is not good enough to create any employment, which is consistent with the economy of the country that has grown by 0.8%, I think, for the past 10 years or so. So now, those are the things that we need to engage on. Because if the economy does not grow, what Prof. Bonang would know, they are in business, they are the business leaders of South Africa, then the demand for employment will not exist. Or we might experience a jobless growth, which is a phenomenon we experience when we are rebounding, economic rebound from COVID. But those are the things we need to engage on. Then we also identified, as the Convocation executive, that there was a time in the world where there were no in Google GPS. You had your physical maps, and there were times when those maps did not exist. And I mentioned that because Prof. Chaluf, I know you are also a pastor, and Prof. Fika. People would always argue that when the Israelites left Egypt to go to the land of milk and honey, it took them a lot of years. But if you calculate the distance today, it's quite a short distance. And I would say, let's then be logical about that. Let's go deeper. Nyana. Back then, do you know how bad the terrain was as compared to now when you see this built environment or the infrastructure? Way different. Back then, they would not have had a map of where they are going. So there are so many other elements. I know Prof. Bonang as well is a pastor. So maybe you would even qualify it further when you take the podium. So now, they did not have a direction in terms of a GPS taking them to that destination. They would not have had a map taking them to that destination and other things. And that would have contributed to the length of time it took them to get to the destination. What do I mean? I mean that in the context of today, when you do not have a mentor and you have to figure everything out yourself, it takes you a bit longer to achieve things that someone with a mentor who is a guide, a GPS, a map would achieve. You are most likely to encounter a lot of problems that you could have avoided because of your lack of understanding or inadequate understanding of the terrain you find yourself in. And most of us just so happen that we do not have mentors. Even now, when we are employed, we did not have mentors even then. So as other people that we would have known were rising, they were not lifting us up. And that is another citation from the book where Prof. Bonang states that after over 30 years of working, and a significant amount of those years being in senior and executive leadership, it is now time for me to lift others up, to lower the ladder, to lower the rope, to be that GPS, to be that guide. So now I think we are now getting the logical connection that part of also addressing the issue of graduate unemployment and underemployment is having a mentor who would tell you even the most basics, that you structure your CV, Mr. Toriso, according to the advertisement. So there are many things you would like to put in there, your achievements, your credentials. But if they are not required, they will not assist you. So now, it is only once the rope is lowered, once that ladder is lowered, someone will say, do not do this. Then you would get it right and you would get to your destination a bit quicker. Then you would buy your first car in your 20s. I also read from the book that when you bought your first car, so you would buy them in those earlier stages than to buy your first car in your 30s, which is a reality of most of us who have it, because some are still trying to get it. So now that then becomes what we would have packaged. And in that package, would have then given it to the speaker to say, with your vast experience, and I don't know if they know you, Prof. The first time I got to know you was on TV when you were speaking truth to power. Very vocal, very confrontational, and there are such citations in the book as well. So I don't want to be too long because my responsibility is not to give a lecture, but it's just to stimulate the audience so they can get the thinking behind the activity of today. So where and how and so forth. So now that at the very least, at the high level, covers then the topic. Now the other responsibility I then have is to introduce the speaker. So I'll read from my device here, which is not an iPhone, neither is it a Samsung. It's what is this thing? Honor. I have a bad eyesight, but I'll try my best. So, in the introduction of the speaker today, our guest of honor, Professor Bonang Mohale. Professor Bonang Mohale is the Chancellor of the University of Free State, former President of Business Unity South Africa, BUSA, Professor of Practice in the Johannesburg Business School, JBS, in the Faculty of Business and Economics, and Chairman of two listed entities, the Bidvest Group Limited and Angelo Mittal, as well as Swiss Re Corporate Solutions Africa and SBV Services. Is it the SBV, the money SBV? Oh. He is a member of the Community of Chairpersons, COC, of the World Economic Forum, WEF, and author of the two best-selling books, Lift as You Rise, which would have inspired today, and Behold the Turtle. In November 2001, he received the Presidential Award for his servanthood in South African industry and the economic empowerment of previously disadvantaged individuals. He is the recipient of the African Union's Lifetime Achievement Award 2024 at the Africa Career and Gala Awards in recognition of exceptional contribution and achievement. In 2004, Society for Industrial and Organizational Psychology of South Africa, Special Presidential Business Leadership Award for commitment to ethical leadership, social justice, and economic transformation. 2003 ME Vision Academy Awards exclusive recognition in successful leadership for consistently leading self and people successfully. Successfully also leading as a senior executive and CEO, successfully leading society in various impactful roles and contribution to mentoring and inspiring future successful leaders. He has been included in the Reputation Polls International 2023 list of the 100 most reputable Africans. The selection criteria are integrity, reputation, transparency, visibility, and impact. Attributes we align with as the Northwest University. For all gathered here, I would like to then introduce our speaker today, Professor Bonang Mohale.
I want to remember your face so that when I meet you in heaven, I will be able to recognize you. And thank you once again. These authentically simple and yet profoundly gravid words are spoken by a little girl who's just one of 200 to have received a wheelchair each from Nigeria's billionaire, Ntate Femi Otedole. When Femi prepares to leave thinking that his job is done, the little girl clutches onto his legs, he looks down and he says, "Is there anything more that I can do for you, my little girl?" She looks up and utters these truly life-changing words. And by so doing, gives Ntate Femi Otedole happiness for the first time in his life. By so doing, allows Femi to touch, hug, feel, and experience the meaning of true joy for the first time in his life. But by so doing, introduces this notion called transformative philanthropy. How can we give, on the one hand, in such a manner that we transform society? But most importantly, how can we give in a manner that transforms the philanthropist? I've personally never met a poor philanthropist. In fact, there is no nobility in being poor. Isn't it amazing that 30 years into democracy, poverty still has primarily a black and feminine face? Put differently, if wealth is the inevitable outcome of both hard work and enterprise, then every woman in Africa should be a dollar billionaire. So I'm hoping that as a direct result of engagement, interaction, and interface this evening as we break bread together, maybe, just maybe, we might be able to release better humans. Human beings that are intimately connected with other humans, not things. People that would help us create holding spaces so that the majority of our people can just participate in the economy. Not to reach their fullest potential, just to reach their potential. Because we know that we are much more than what we've become. I'm talking to the leadership and alumni of the Northwest University. This is no more than 11% of the people that have an opportunity to go to institutions of higher learning. Leadership. But leadership can't just be in and of itself. Leadership must be for some higher purpose. Leadership that will have a full appreciation that, yes, it presupposes followership. But true leadership, it's not about creating many followers. It's about creating other leaders. There's a wonderful adage, African adage, that says the product of the amarula tree, it's not the amarula fruit, it's another amarula tree. Because when a candle lights another candle, it loses nothing, but it gains more light. Leadership that have a full appreciation that it is a privilege to improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people, not an opportunity to enrich self. Leadership that maybe might take us to our new nirvana, a place that has eluded us up until now. So that all of us collectively graduate from being important people to being people of significance, from good-looking people to people that look good, from businesses that ordinarily and regularly take to the one that often gives. Leadership that knows that ego is the enemy of leadership, the same way that panic is the enemy of progress. That arrogance is the camouflage for insecurity, that it's okay, especially for us men, to be vulnerable, to cry from time to time, because that's what makes us human. Being human simply means that those that are helping others are completing God's work. Because I've never met a single person that is successful who's ever reached there on their own. All of us have received help. often from the people we don't even know. When we walk into the boardrooms, we don't know the wars that have been waged by our predecessors to make it possible for that board, for that executive to be looking for women, for black people, or for people with disabilities. 30 years into democracy, we're in a spot of bother. Very far from accomplishing the South Africa of Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela's dreams, the South Africa we have all been praying for. The dream has been deferred. And you see it in all the indices. The first 15 years, we were forwards and upwards in the trajectory. We walked proud and tall. We went to multilateral institutions, the World Bank and the IMF, and they would, in hushed tones, say, the South Africans are here. We created this rainbow nation, and we became the pride and joy of the 55 other African countries, because I include the South Sahara. The last 15 years, we succumbed to greed. That's at the root, the crux of why the wheels came off. And now we hold the world record for all the wrong reasons. We have the highest cash in transit heist in the world. This last quarter, we had 3,752. That's more than Brazil has had in the entire year. We've taken over a lot of things from Brazil in 2010. We became the most unequal society in the world with a Gini coefficient of 0.63. I'm talking to leadership here. When we talk about inequality in South Africa, we only talk about income inequality, not wealth inequality, not asset inequality. Because I swear to God, if we're to include those, there'll be a revolution in this country. We're the country with the highest unemployment rate in the world. We even lie to ourselves and coast two figures, like we did in apartheid years when we had the financial rent and the commercial rent, so that if the one doesn't favor us, then we quote the other. We say it has come down to 32.1%. That's still worse than countries at war. The nominal unemployment rate is 42%. During the 2 weeks in July of 2021, youth unemployment was 74.9%. I'm amongst friends, so let's say 75%. When 8 out of 10 young people are sitting at home, twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do, not only are we asking for trouble, but we're actively inviting it. So what led to those 10 malls being banned, 12 warehouses, 1,400 ATMs looted, 140 million rand stolen in the first hour? The economy of KwaZulu-Natal lost 30 billion rands of their GDP. It spilled over to Katlehong and indeed to Gauteng. Another 20 billion was lost cumulatively, 50 billion rands in just those 2 weeks in July. Most damage happened not on day 1, 2, or 3, but on day 4, when a lot of our people suffered a real FOMO to demonstrate that had the police acted, it looked like they were even remotely interested, most of the damage that happened in day 4 could not have happened. Our unemployment should worry all of us, because my grandmother says, when your neighbor is hungry, you can't sleep at night. With a country with the highest GBVF rate in the world. Not by a factor of 2, but 5 times the global average, to show that we haven't even begun to address the collective trauma that we as a people have suffered during the 400 years of colonialism, 98 years of separate development, 48 years of institutionalized apartheid. We are a wounded people, forged in fire, and we haven't even begun to confront this monster that makes us respond to basic frustration, human frustrations, with violence. It doesn't happen everywhere else in the world where somebody just is looking for your cell phone, but they blow your brains off just to get the cell phone. Only in this country. Second, only to Russia in terms of the suicide rate in the world. How does this manifest? Unfortunately, this inequality is widening. Racism is at an all-time high. It is black graduates that are roaming the streets. Hopefully, I never thought that in my lifetime, the people that are sitting on top of the food chain, doctors, clinicians who've done their 6 years of study, they're left with only 2 Zuma years. The Gauteng government tells us that they've got no budget because 70% of their budget goes to paying salaries. 839 of them are sitting at home. They can't even be GPs because you need these 2 years to register with the old South African Medical and Dental Council. They can't even do that. Families, especially in Limpopo, they've sold their 15 cattle so that they can go to school. They celebrated that. They are now referred to as Dr. Malamulela. And they are sitting at home absolutely frustrated and depressed. They look at them every day and said, we thought you are our, not second, but last chance. And now you're sitting here needing therapy yourself. Public education has collapsed. I mean, since when is 30% an acceptable pass rate? Crucial infrastructure that we inherited from people who don't even like us is lying barren. Not far from here, there used to be a road depot station. They started with the cables overhead and stole it, not at midnight when everybody was sleeping, during the middle of the day. Then they took the rail itself, one steel at a time. They were still not satisfied. They came back to steal the entire building, one brick at a time. Now, when you go to road depot station, it's just there, and many of them. The brazenness is what should concern you and I. They steal cables in front of El Dorado police station at midday. And lawlessness has now become an epidemic. And yet we continue to churn out these graduates in our 26 public universities. So the old Department of Higher Education and Training that used to be led by Dr. Blade Nzimande at that time, 2022, they did a piece of work, and they said at that time there's 1.2 million students in the 26 public universities. If we wanted to educate all of them on a fee-free basis, it will cost us 50 billion rands. It's a lot of money, 50 billion. But when you consider that Edward Kidsvetter, this last financial year ended on the 29th of February 2024, he actually banked 2 trillion South African rands. 50 billion is a spit in the bucket. The year before, he collected 2 trillion rands. After tax refunds to businesses and to individuals, he still banked 1.687 trillion South African rands. If you look at the last 10 years, we've been collecting on average 1.4 trillion. So to be fair, if you did a little bit of arithmetic and you divide 1.4 trillion by the 63 million South Africans, there's no reason why anyone should go to bed hungry. Absolutely no reason whatsoever. And yet, In our own universities, there are students that not only don't have accommodation, but they sleep in the toilets. That's where they shower. That's where they clean themselves up in the morning. Some other students have made a plan. They put a brown box at the corner of the library where they throw in their sandwiches so that they come out in the middle of the night to have something to eat just for that day. I think business, it's not our second chance, it's our last chance. Because only business can spell this thing called project management. How to deliver mega projects on time, on budget, and in full. They do it effortless. They do it with their eyes closed when governments the world over struggle. I think it's criminal. It's a sin that the Gauteng government has just returned 2.1 billion back to National Treasury of 3.4 billion that was unspent the year before. And yet people don't have houses. People don't have electricity, which is the fourth means of production. Our streets are littered with potholes. There are no traffic lights. Surely it's not because they couldn't find something to spend it on. But that's what happens when you have inappropriate cadre deployment. All other nations, everywhere else in the world, including the Broederbond and the National Party, they put their best foot forward. 30 years of democracy, we have demonstrated to ourselves that we put our absolute worst forward. No wonder we are in a spurt of bother. In doing this piece of work, they also tell us that there's this small problem called historical debt. 2022, they put that figure at 16.5 billion, 9.2 billion of which is irrecoverable. So if I exclude the 3.5 million small and medium enterprises, because those are survivalist, hand to mouth, and I start only with the 1.5 million medium-sized companies with a turnover of 300 million and above. If I look at 2010, the companies that were listed on the main board of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange, now there's 298 of them and going down. I exclude the ones that are on AltX. If I zone in on the 60 private equity firms that hold equities in these 80 private equity companies, all of them, without doubt and without exception, have some sort of a corporate social investment. 98% of them have no more than 4 focus areas. 100% of them, of those 4, one of them has something to do with education. So if we look at these companies in the centerpiece of the pupils of their eye, and we say to them, and we're not even asking you to make more money or to make more profits, just that which your board has already approved as CSI. And we ask each one of them to put a measly 1 million rand into a historical debt fund. Not in 30 years of democracy. In 1 year, would have wiped off the entire 16.5 billion. And by so doing, give these 100,000 young people that have completed their studies last year, but can't graduate because they owe these 26 public universities. And by so doing, allow them an opportunity to reclaim their self-worth, their self-respect, instead of swelling the ranks of the unemployed and finding it easier, more convenient to queue for the 350 social relief of distress grant, 350 now, 370, rather than coming to your home to do your garden or wash your cars, where you might possibly pay them 5,000 a month. Where there's only 16.5 million of us who are gainfully employed. 12.7 million people are unemployed. 10 million young people are not in employment, education, and training. 6 million boys don't even know their fathers. And yet we know that sons learn by looking at the back of the head of their fathers. It's monkey see, monkey do. Not monkey hear, monkey do. So it demonstrates beyond any shadow of doubt that we as a country, as a people with great natural endowment, any country that makes English compulsory but agriculture optional is prone to produce citizens that speak English very fluently on an empty stomach. So it is that Whitlefips gathered in a manner that we are gathered, sitting like we are sitting in a dinner, reminds us that it was the rule of law that slaves could not play the white keys of the piano, that all the Negro spirituals were composed using only the black keys. And he stood in a stage that looks pretty much like this one to sing that John Newton classic, The Amazing Grace, composed with only 5 black keys. All of us are daughters and sons of amazing warriors who have got so much systems and processes and resources, time, energy, and effort, much more than the 5 black keys. Imagine what we collectively can achieve and accomplish as a people. Harriet Tubman is a slave abolitionist. And she opines that I've freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew that they were slaves.
Let's give him a round of applause. Wow. Okay. That was thought-provoking, right? Right? I can just hear that the room is very quiet. So one statement that he started off, he said, true leadership is not about creating many followers, but creating other leaders. Close quote. That is Prof. Bonang Mohale. Let's give him a round of applause. Now, guys, we have him for you. It is time now for you guys to ask questions to our guest of honor at the moment. Do we have questions that anyone want to ask him about what he just said? Please come on, just be free to ask any questions. Is there anyone in here? Can I just see anybody? Guys? Okay, yes, thank you, lady. Thank you for breaking the ice. Please introduce your name so that he remembers. You never know where you might end up being with this, environment that we're in. So please introduce yourself. What's your name, and then ask your question.
Uqale kae bonolo, ne? It's late in the night.
After such a talk, I don't know how to begin with. Ebonolo. My name is Kamohelo Butsi. I'm from Diepsloot. It is an informal settlement north of Johannesburg. So everybody can imagine that I have the burden of carrying the entire community. And as you were speaking, it felt like you were practically reading my life story. I am the child that my parents had a lot of hope in. I completed my PhD in 2022, and I've been in one postdoc after the other without any possibility or hope or claims of hope of a permanent job. And my question to you is, when you're in such a state, I hope it's an easy question. When you're in such a state and you are trying to be hopeful every single day and you are met with disappointment, how do you stay hopeful?
Sure. Ibunolo mene. Ibunolo. Let me start by saying philosophers the world over are good at interpreting the world in many various forms. Our job as leaders is to change it. Because human greatness is measured not in power and money, but in goodness and character. That's why we've got doctors like you who've invested time, energy, and effort. And how do you come back and you struggle to make a contribution? Because that's all you want. So I would ask that when we are done, I'll give you my business card because I'm a businessman. So that you send your updated CV to me. And I might know something. Because my grandmother reminds us that, one hand that lifts another human being, it's much better than two hands clasped in prayer. It's not useful when you go in the middle of the night to your priest and says, Father, I haven't had anything to eat for 3 full days. And the priest says, let's kneel down, my child, and pray. It's more useful for the priest to say, you came at the right time. Because yesterday's plate I didn't finish. Let's see whether I can share it with you. That's what it means to be human. Ntate hana ale tsupulela fela mahlangu when he introduced me. He said one of my first books that I wrote and launched on Wednesday, the 21st of November 2018, came about not because I'm an author. I don't even write that well. But because at that time I was mentoring 18 people, 16 of them were women, only 2 were men. And I picked them just a level below EXCO because I thought they stand a better chance of breaking through the concrete ceiling. And 9 plus 1 of them became MDs, CEOs, and presidents of organizations, having worked with them. Not because of me, because they became aware of what they're capable of doing. And I said, if I can mentor 18 people in 1 year, it will take me a long time to reach the 30 million South Africans that live below the poverty datum line, defined as a combined household income of less than 300,000 rands per annum. I said, maybe for posterity's sake, let me put these thoughts in a book so that maybe my grandchildren, nieces and nephews can read, and by so doing, I can reach many more people. That's what made me leave practicing medicine at Wits when I went and studied MBBCH and listened in my car that time driving to Witbank and listened to an African that I then came to know as the late Maduke Lottenlof. And said, if an African can speak with such confidence, what does he do? I learned that he's a manager. I said, that's what I want to be. Because as a doctor, you see 1 patient at a time. But as a manager, maybe you can supervise 8 at a time. Today, we measure that as double materiality, financial and impact. Because imagine if you are the reason why somebody feels seen, noticed, heard, but most importantly, loved, respected, and supported. That's what we want to do. Hence, the title of that first book, it's an African adage, not William Wordsworth or William Shakespeare. African adage, because if you haven't realized, I am an African. Lift as you rise. It says, as an individual, there is no exercise much more powerful for the heart than extending a hand down and lifting another human being. It's a continuous tense. It doesn't say, wait until you have risen. It says, success is who we become in the process of succeeding. Lift as you rise. Don't wait until you have the title on a business card or the C-suite. Take 2 steps in the ladder of success and extend a hand and lift another human being. That's what makes us human. It says, if you are a government, the best amongst us lead with a heart of a servant, because servant leadership is not a leader with many servants. It says, if you are a business, you need to continue to do well by doing good, because doing good is good for everyone. That we can't, some of us, just be okay until all of us are okay. It says business can continue to be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty, because when business creates jobs, it's not an act of altruism or CSI. You are creating markets of the future. That's what Henry T. Ford had in mind when he created the Model T Ford, to say we want to build cars that our own employees can afford, because there's a problem when your own employees can't afford the goods and the services that you provide.
Thank you. Lift as you rise. Let's hear the next question.
Good evening, everyone. This is Lucas. I'm coming from a non-profit organization that is located in Freedom Park in Soweto. I think we are doing our part in empowering the young people, because I work in the youth readiness program, whereby we pair these young people who are in varsity with mentors who are in corporate. If you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, the topic of today is very thought-provoking, because I think when we have this discussion, we don't go to the crux of the problem. Why do we have this inequality? And I often find it very interesting that we have this best constitution in the world, but we are the most unequal country in the world. Isn't that interesting? And we often, when we're sitting in this table, use we theorize the poverty of Black people, but I believe that it's systematic. It's a deliberate thing. We are not here because Black people don't want to work. I think it's because of the system that we have or inherited. And because we're in this democracy, we often undermine the colonial system, which ran from 1652 until 1948, which is 296, if I'm not mistaken, a system oppressing Black person deliberately. And you have 48 years from 1948, is it 1948 to 1994? When you combine those years, it's more than 300 years, a system running through, oppressing people deliberately. So I think when we actually want to get to the nub of the problem, why are we here? Why do we have this inequality? And this inequality actually shows itself from 1994 and until today. The number of unemployment rise each and every year. I can promise now, if we are in 40-something% of unemployment, next year it's going up. It's not going down. I just wanted to say that we need to actually evaluate the system that we have, the constitution that is the best in the world, but we are the most unequal people in the world. Thank you so much.
Mangbong and Kosia. Sure. So maybe 3 things. Just some sound bites. There's nothing wrong with your blackness, because poverty of black people is not an accident, and it's not an individual failure. It's both systemic and systematic. There are some people who invest time, energy, and effort to make sure that you don't do well because it suits them. Two, again, 30 years into democracy, we have done nothing to change the economic system that has resulted in this that we're talking about. So the British had a dilemma when they wanted to leave the South Africa to either the black intellectuals at that time, called the black elites, because they were better educated and better farmers. Your forebears were farmers. Or to leave it to the white male Afrikaners at that time. And they went into a corner to say, but what do we want as Britain? Three things. Said, we want a crucible of cheap labor in perpetuity. Two, they said, we want these blacks to go to the belly of the earth and risk life and limb to go and get this gold. We'll have the first right of refusal. Three, they said they can scratch the surface and maybe do a little bit of mining and find these diamonds, but we'll determine the price. Hence the creation of the London Sales Organization. 30 years, we haven't changed that system. It's still intact. So what then is the solution? So number one, institutions of higher learning are okay. But remember, in apartheid, no more than 7% of the population went to institutions of higher learning. We increased that to 11%. But what about the other 89%? You don't build an economy just with doctors and lawyers. You build an economy by creating goods that people want. And if you get it right, you name a price. Germany is a good example. After the New Deal, Second World War, they were poorer than most African countries. And in Germany today, they value vocational training. They don't even allow everybody to go through what we used to call matric. You call it grade 12. They catch you sometimes as standard 8, and they teach you to be a motor mechanic. And look at the cars they produce. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, Porsche. Because that's how you build an economy. But for some reason, when we became free, we became obsessed. You know, when you have been oppressed for a long time, sometimes if you can't see it, you can't be it. So we restructured institutions of higher learning at that time. We closed vocational schools called Bo Ambach. We stopped apprenticeships that made people to be lift mechanics. That would then, when they finished with 4 years, they write their government ticket, and they used to live in townships like Leondale and Don Park, where Chris Hani was assassinated. Those were blue-collar workers. So nursing colleges and teachers training colleges, and we merged them the same way that we didn't have any thought that here's a guy called Van der Bijl who built Eskom, 56 gigawatt of electricity, but also built the IDC and Iskor, which is now called ArcelorMittal, one of the companies that I have the privilege of chairing. 56 gigawatt of electricity, made and designed for no more than 10% of the population. So we become free 27th of April 1994, which then became the 28th and the 29th. And we say we want to build 4 million more new houses. We want to electrify the rate of 10,000 homes a month, every month. When Dr. Ruel Khoza was the chairman of Eskom at that time, and it had a rating higher than sovereign. But we didn't think once to increase the capacity. Because this car is built to take 5 people. Now you've got 10 people, but you don't buy a bigger car or another car. It was never going to work. So let me just end by saying, I think the long-term solution for the clever people and the leaders that are in the room is that we need to build our own businesses and hire our own children. Because I think it's madness to continue to make babies and then send them to a different neighborhood for them to go down on their knees and ask somebody else for a job. Let me take.
Yeah, indeed, you are thought-provoking.
Askis.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I am Bakanga Khosi from the village called Tau. I don't know if you know about it.
Ke feta le moo hangata.
Yeah,
Ke a
at
boreneng.
least that despised area has raised someone like me. Yeah. Yeah, I've been listening to you curiously. You gave us the background of South Africa, 30 years of democracy. The first positive 15 years, the constitution was not there. It was formed in 1996. Government pension fund was not there. It was formed by the same government, by the previous, for now it's in GNU. SARS was not there. It was formed. These are the positive things that we can speak about. Yeah, there was no Department of Public Enterprise. It was formed, and it worked for the good. But for the other 15 years, you gave us another picture again. We saw the Gini coefficient rising high, whereby we took over from Brazil at 0.6. We saw crime rate going high, even higher than the global standards. We saw unemployment also going high from that positive trajectory of the first 15 years. Now my question comes, when 2024, heading for another 35 years of democracy, will South Africa ever be rescued? And if indeed it will be rescued, how will it be rescued from this condition?
No.
Prof, can you hold that? Can we get 2 questions so that you answer them at the same time? We're just looking at time. So,
Ke a dumela.
yeah.
Okay, mine will be very brief. Riperile. My name is Mosa Baloi Sakese. I'm from Kasi Yakupitori, called Soshanguve. My mother tongue is Xitsonga. So before I start, Prof, let me just mention that you're my unofficial mentor. Thank you. My question is on the effectiveness of internship programs, especially in government institutions, because we witness the graduates coming in, they're employed or they're contracted for a year or 2 years, then after that they leave. Obviously, it shows that there's a problem because when they're still with us, they are not they are not finding jobs. They don't leave us before their contract expires. So they go out there to the world, obviously unemployed. So I just want to know your opinion on how effective are government internship programs in South Africa. Thank you.
Last question. Then you can answer all 3.
Le nna ke a dumela.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Prof. My name is Sibusiso Chalufu. I work as the Executive Director for Student Life, but I'm also the acting Deputy Vice Chancellor for the Vanderbilt Park campus. Thank you so much for this profound presentation. There's so much that one could look at and raise, but I think that perhaps, and I feel bad that I haven't had a chance to read the book, but at least I know what I will be reading in December now. Prof, my question actually links up with Ntate Kutau. You know, those of us who are believers have practical ways in which we think about how to enhance our spiritual lives and how to live a Christ-like life. And funny enough, notwithstanding, of course, the fact that this religion, especially Christianity, has been corrupted, it actually has been bastardized. There's so much lying about it. Put that aside. but there are clear ways in which, as a believer, you can actually live in a particular way. Interesting enough, including servant leadership. You know, those amongst us who want to be great, so says the scriptures, must be servants to others. But having said all of that, I'm just wondering, and if it is in the book, please do forgive me. But can you give us at least, because I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, just 5 key things that you think we need to do to change this trajectory? Because I live in Pretoria, and every day when I see, young people who are on the streets looking for jobs and all, my heart bleeds because I'm thinking, what can I do at a practical level? So as leaders, what are those key things that you think we need to do, and how do we then practicalize and at least change the trajectory that we definitely are steering towards? Thank you so much.
Sure. So it's clear that we are all hungry, so I'm standing between you and dinner. So let me give you a sound bite. And I promise that I know all the 3 campuses of NWU. So when you invite me, I'll come again. The idea was not to finish eating this elephant tonight. It was to throw a pebble in the pond. Hopefully it will start some ripple effects. Because you see, if we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. It is up to us to create our own new world. Ha re qale ka wa boreneng. Maybe 5 things that the GNU should do, because if it doesn't, then it risks the continuance and the success of this amazing, wonderful, good nation and this God's own country. So number 1, the one that's less fashionable now to talk about is transformation, so that this economy looks like us, so that it's broadly reflective of the demographics. You see, there can't be economic growth without redistribution. We should call it what it is. I said there's 63 million of us. If I had time, I would tell you that 52.5% of these 63 million are women, and yet their representation in positions of leadership is no more than 24%. African women, less than 4%. And yet we know that when you put a smartphone in the hands of a woman, not only just the nutrition, education, and health of their own children improve, but of the entire society and the community from which they come. COVID was a good example. 198 countries affected and infected by the COVID-19 pandemic. 8 of them dealt better with the pandemic than all the others put together. And all 8 of them had women as their head of state, including New Zealand with 5 million people, and Germany's Angela Merkel, and all the Nordic countries and Scandinavian countries, when you include one more. Number 2, we must have ethical leadership, because ethics are defined. And my grandmother says ethics is what you do when nobody's watching. Thirdly, good governance, because good governance is also codified in King 4, but also in the Companies Act, which has trumping provisions. Number 4, service delivery. That's what politicians do. We say we've got the best constitution in the world, not because of what's contained in the main body of the constitution. Chapter 198 is the job descriptions of people who call themselves politicians. A lot of them will spend 5 years without even reading it, therefore not understanding what they're employed to do. So at load shedding, now we've got water shedding. We are in a spot of bother. And again, Africa is not a poor continent, just poorly managed. Lastly, law and order, safety and security. Because without law and order, safety and security, who are we and what are we? I mean, South Africans, I can understand when they're not safe walking in the streets because they're exposed. But South Africans are not safe in their own homes, which is supposed to be their castle, where you're safe. When you look at the statistics, it's contact crimes and house robberies and breaks in that are on the up and up. So the electricity is now gone beyond 220 volts. The walls are now taller than 6 foot. There's beams and alarms in the house. And yet we are still not safe. So we must make a plan. Ha ke tla go kgaitsedi ya ka. Wena ngwaneso, maybe one or two things. And maybe let me combine it at a practical level to say, but what can we do as people as well? So all of us like acting victims as if we don't have an agency and we don't have money. And yet we do. How many of us, when you buy a new house, do you even think about what this biggest investment that most of us can do for the economy? How many of us go out of our way when you buy your own house, go Orange Farm, le ko Pelanda, le Katlehong, Langa, Nyanga, Mondlo, in the dusty hills of KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape, Egugulethu. To go and look at the people in your own community that sell homes and say, but I want to buy my house from you so that you are the one that gets my 7%. So that we're intentional. This shouldn't be an accident. How many of us walk on a Saturday with shorts and flip-flops into a dealership to go and buy that red BMW X5 with white leather interior? And you just walk around and you find Memadi Khetsi at the corner there, and the first person to jump at you and say, may I help you, sir? And say, no, I want to buy my car from Memadi Khetsi so that you get the commission. Because in the 30 years, when you look at the data, there are only 3 communities that did better than all of us put together. The people that made the most amount of money in the 30 years of democracy are the Jewish people, the Afrikaner people, and the Muslim people, because they've got capital. So when Shell Oil Products Africa says, we've got a service station that pumps 400,000 liters a month, and for 5 million rand, you and I run to the National Empowerment Fund that is run by Mephiliswe Buthelezi. Now Mephiliswe Mthethwa, and you apply for funding. These 3 communities, they go to friends, family, and fools, and they raise the ad is put on Tuesday. On Friday, they've got 5 million in cash, and they're able to buy a service station. 90 days later, you and I are still waiting for a response from the NEF. CEDA, CFA now matched. And after 90 days, when you call them, they say, oh, no, we're still waiting for collateral. How will you have collateral? But I said at a personal level, how many of us would take the convenience of waking up on Sunday, wearing a gown with your slippers, you go to your gate and you pick up your Sunday Times to walk into the house just to read it? It's convenient and it's nice. And that's what the Jewish people do. They walk 2 kilometers to go to another Jewish shop to buy from there. Because when these 3 communities, what they do, they've got 10 secrets. That's why they're such successful, formidable business people. So if I had time, I'll share with you those 10. But let me just whet your appetite with 3. They ask the question, do you as a community and as a family sit around the table and talk about how to make money? 2, do you as a family and as a community regularly buy from each other and one another. Lastly, do you as a family and the community invest in and refer business to each other? That's all it is, not rocket science. All other nations in the world, when they've got money, they remember home and they use their money to build homes that look like home. Hence, in the Western Cape, there's Cape Dutch architecture. When the Italians are here, they build houses that remind them of Italy, called Tuscany. Only black people, when they've got money, they want to do anything but that will remind them of where they come from. So even when you have an opportunity to engage gardening services in your own home, because you live in Branston, why don't you ask Ntate Lungile Moyo to be your gardener, and you pay him 5,000 rand? By so doing, Tate Lungile is able to reclaim his self-respect and pride, can take his own kids to school. That's being intentional, that's being deliberate, that's being purposeful. You said is the last question, but I see you dying to ask one more. Nna ke re ko save nako. E botse ya ho qetela he ke tsebe ho se theoha.
Yes, there's an online question. Just hold it. Then I have two hands. Everyone, I apologize, everyone that I've asked. I know it's thought provoking, but we're looking at time, and we still have dinner to have. It's a networking session. We do have Prof with us, so you can ask as many questions directly towards him. You never know, ne? So I apologize on that. But let me give you this question. It's from online. There are people who are actually tuned in. Chubenzo says, as someone in academia and worried about employment post the PhD, how can we encourage lift as you rise mentality in the publish or perish academia environment? It's a question from online. Then the last two questions, and then I'll give back to Mr. Clement to continue the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof, for such a powerful presentation. Indeed, from it we learned a lot, especially when you took us back in the history of the economic state of our country. You touched on the present times of our country economically and also politically where we stand and academically. So now, given the background that you've given us, Prof, we become worried to say we know where we are coming from and we see where we are. But now, what will happen in the future? So, where am I coming from with this question, Prof? We have academics who are unemployed. A PhD holder is unemployed. Yet, you mentioned what do we call it, deployment in part of your presentation. Yet there is someone who is deployed politically, who is leading in the field that the lady specialized in her research, but that particular person doesn't have the background of the field. So in the future, how as academics do we remain hopeful to say at one stage our voice will be heard? I'm giving an example.
I got you.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Hello, Prof. I am Pimelo Tabile. I was born and raised in Wolmaranstad in the Northwest, currently residing in Sasolburg. I'm a DA councillor in Metsmaolo local municipality. Now, my question is, coming from Wolmaranstad, it's a small town, and there are not a lot of businesses. Even the municipality itself, it relies on grants from government. It's a town rich in diamonds and also relies heavily on agriculture. But the challenge is most of the farms surrounding the town are owned by farmers, can say white farmers. And so then my question is that how then do we create a conducive environment in those small rural municipalities or towns whereby we can attract these big businesses to invest there, that will then yield into more employment for our young people in those towns? Thank you.
Sure. Ntate ke a leboha. So let me start with that academic one. And again, honestly, in the interest of time, just sound bites. So what we are trying to do in these 26 public universities, I exclude the TVET colleges, because those can give us vocational, which is what we need a la German. Number one, I think we are trying to bring about this notion of academic excellence, but an inclusive academic excellence. Two, we are trying to create ethical frameworks in the way we engage, interact, and interface with all our communities. Three, we are trying to bring about social justice approach in the assessment of excellence. Penultimate one, we are trying to bring about public ownership of these universities. Because if the public feels like we own the University of Fort Hare in Alice, they would have different conversations with their security people who, because when you live in Alice, you want to go to town, you go through Fort Hare. Instead of ushering you, hey, kuyafundwa la, enzundlule, that you can linger on, because the people that come from Limpopo can see the University of Terfloop as pupils. They know after matric, now grade 12, what else to do after that. And they aspire for it. The last one, we want to bring about a sustainable funding model so that you are not excluded from getting higher institution education just because you chose your parents to be poor. If I come to yours, Ntate, looking forward, we know the 30 years hasn't worked for us, even though the 15 years started so well, really so well. Maybe, just maybe, we should change the way we choose our leaders, because at the moment, there's no notion of final accountability, because we vote for the party. And the party gets, like the ANC did, 2/3 majority on the 27th of April, 1994. And then they give us leaders. Handed over seamlessly to Thabo Mbeki, who gave us 72.9%. I'm amongst friends, 73%. They could have changed the constitution if they wanted to. But at that time, we had 43 consecutive quarters of positive GDP growth. Like that. But the jobs grew, but not commensurate to the growth. That's why that era we called it jobless growth. And then 2007 on the way to Polokwane, we call it Polokwane, but it was in Mankweng. For the first time, we introduced money in the politics of the ANC. And with our eyes open, we chose to elect somebody who's just been fired by his own party, who was facing rape charges. To say, but we want you to be our leader. Now we are surprised that at that time, 2009, the drop was precipitous. If I had time, I would tell you that. And we made him leader of the moral regeneration movement. At that time, if I had time, I would tell you that during the height of state capture, the first 5 years, we stole 1.5 trillion South African rands. That's 2/3 of what Edward Kitzvetter collects as revenue from all of us. In those 9 wasted years, we're suffering off on average 200 billion a year every year, just to the 2 Zubda families. So that we can directly elect people who are our leaders. 2, we need to professionalize the civil service. Because everybody, when they get into power, they find the DGs there, but because he was appointed by the ANC, you are the DA, you want your own DG from the DA. Let the civil servants be just the people who keep these wheels going. Like in companies, 80% of the people in our companies are the people who come in at 8, they leave at 5. Every day, they know what they need to do. They are not the top 10% who get bonuses and who are not accelerated. They just keep the wheels going. The CEO gets an accident and for 3 months doesn't come to work, but the company continues to work. It's 80% of those people. Countries should be able to run, irrespective of who comes into power. In the interest of time, lastly, every development everywhere else in the world, society looks at the best amongst them to say, we want you to lead us to a place where we have never been. The pastor is, I'm a good Catholic boy. I'm a businessman. But Moses' father-in-law advises him as his mentor, Jethro, and says to Moses, go and find yourself men who fear God, who don't have ill-gotten wealth. The best amongst your people to be the leaders of thousands, of hundreds, and tens. It talks to putting your best foot forward. Now here we have 257 municipalities. And in KwaZulu-Natal alone, they tell us there's 127 councillors who don't have matric. In every other company, for you to sign off the books, you have to be a CASA. And that we are told that 87% of the councillors who are finance managers don't even have matric. We are told that only a third of these municipalities work. The other third, failing a bit. The last third, hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And you see it with the Auditor General's report, that the number of municipalities that have clean audits, it's actually going south. Please allow me to thank you for being so generous with your time, and repeat my commitment that when you invite me to the NWU, any of these 3 campuses, I have a bicycle. I'll get onto my bicycle and come so that we continue this conversation, because we are daughters and sons of amazing warriors that want so much from us. Because we know that, isn't it amazing that when the teachers have high expectations of their pupils, we used to call them, not learners, their learners generally do well. Bitso la ka ke Bonang Mohale, ke Mokwena Mokotedi, ke Mokgodutswane o Moholo, Sekgosha ka Mpafatse. Kwena e jarile lehlabathe ka mokokotlo. Ho thwe ya sesa kwena. Ya nyoloha madiba. Thalabodiba ya ithatika ka lebopo. Ya raha leqhamu ha tsekema. Ya qethuha ra ba ra bona mmala o mosweu mpempeng tsa makwala ha tetema. Ya lelala a sheba hodimo ra ba ra bona hodimo mahananeng hona moo o dulang teng morena le mina. Ke gagaulane molamu a tshepe ke le rua la morampo ka nna ke bona ke banana ke bona ke ditsha dikgolo fela. Ke mphatlalatsane na ledi ya meso re bone ka yona hore masiu a se a sele. Ke le ne salama metsi matshwana la metsi madididi metsi a ka thewa thabeng a etsa diphororo banana ba sala ba o tlhakwa makahlo. Ke gegediang gege se kgetha makgetha se kgethi batho bana ke ba ntata ba gale ebile ke gale ba o tsekisa borena. Ke for peace. Kgaola dithota re bone o etsise mmao le ntatao mohlango le mohlatsatsi le leholo mohla o no phala disobaloi thoteng tsa modidi ba taoleng Mohale ha matha wa lelala tse pasela shebile hodimo a yo kena ba baholo ba hae baholo bo ntile morunyane motse o sena mokwena wa hlora ke le ranthane la nthithi ya banana ba le pume ba lahla fatshe a re le sa le tshikisa Mohale na ho tsheka wa tsheka mokwena mpa sitwa ko a gamolala tsheka jwalo ka mmankukune tsietsa jwang haholo ke basadi ba ntse ba mpotsa gafetsa Bonang ha ile kae ha e se hole sebakanyana se hole ba o pala mapere le ba maoto ba ntse ba fihla ho dikoting ka ba ke le bontsha nka kgathala kwa gamona le hodimong ho ja ho a ngodiswa ka ba ke re romela ditlhare teng ke dilemo le ngwana mme a ntse a kula Mohale o halefetseng ha kana kana ke majantja madimo a e ja batho ha lale le rena makwala re none e tsentwa ke ya madula mmoho ya ka e baneng ntate nka gelle molangwana ke iphoke fela e tswe tlala ena e sitwa e nyala ho thwanyi bolokwe ka ofela ya kgaola yaya.
Well, we hear you, Prof. But what's also true is that some of us get angry when we hear some of these things, and we can't fight. So we can only pray to God and the ancestors that may we transform our anger into something meaningful, something that can contribute to the development and growth of our country and to fellow human beings. Mr. Toriso Maseng is responsible for the career services and alumni in the Northwest University. Because of time, he's going to be very brief to say what is it that as alumni, convocation members, you can contribute to the university and to those young people who are still in the pipeline. Please, Mr. Toriso. Prof. Chalufu and I were with the Chinese delegation and other South African university students this morning, and there is what is called the skills passport. So that's the skills passport at the airports. You have a dedicated lane. You produce that passport, you avoid that. And these are some of the things that we need to talk about. Luckily, we have through the BRICS Business Council and this Innovation and Technology Initiative an opportunity to introduce such things. Ndati.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, allow me to borrow from the previous speaker as well as the program director without wasting much time. As part of being a socially responsive university that demonstrates one of the fundamental values of ethics of care, we are giving Northwest University alumni an opportunity to contribute meaningfully at Northwest University. There are indeed various ways that alumni can contribute to the Northwest University, and that includes providing financial support, giving their time to a predetermined course, providing training, public lecture. That is the same initiative of this evening. Mentorship programs is one of the opportunities that you can indeed contribute as NWU alumni. Work integrated learning, linking the Northwest University and the student with the opportunities that are available in the industry. But for the purpose of the engagement this evening, we will purely focus on mentorship as one of the opportunities whereby you can contribute. I will borrow from the literature by Paslow and Worry, who defined mentorship as the aim that is get to help and support people to manage their own learning in order that they may maximize their potential, develop their skills, improve their experiences, and enable them to become the persons they want to be in the society. Mentoring is indeed a powerful personal development and empowerment tool. It is often described as a professional relationship in which an inexperienced person that is a mentor can assist another person, a mentee being our students and our graduates, in developing specific skills and knowledge that will enhance the mentee's professional and personal growth. It is an effective way of helping people to progress in their chosen career, and it is also helpful relationship based on trust and respect. Mentoring uses a more directive approach than coaching. The mentor passes on his or her expert knowledge to the mentee, being our student and graduate, to foster a supportive relationship. The mentor can often be a more senior member of staff, experienced professional, but the main prerequisite is that a mentor must have an excellent experience in the mentee's field of work. A mentor is a guide. Is a guide who can help the mentee, our student, find the right direction and assist in developing solutions to their career issues. Listening skills are very important, and mentors rely on having had similar experiences to gain empathy and understanding of the mentee's issues. In terms of how we see the practice, how this initiative will roll out, we see this as an ongoing relationship, a relationship that can last longer, a longer period of time, that will adopt a broader view of the person. Although it can be structured at a time, it can also be more informal, and meetings can also take place as and when the mentee needs some advice, guidance, or support. A mentor is usually a more experienced person, a qualified professional. We see this as somebody who's been in the field for at least a period of 5 years and above. Our focus is that a mentor and mentee, they focus purely on career and personal development as a holistic approach. And as we begin the year 2025, our focus will purely be on network mentorship. And that will involve a group of students and graduates with access to a team of mentors. Traditionally, we know that a mentor-mentee relationship is a one-on-one approach. But in these instances, because we have more bigger challenges, the elephant is bigger in the room. There are more challenges of younger people. It will indeed be a challenge or we will be limiting the opportunities and the impact that we want to make to the young people if we say we'll adopt a approach of saying a one-on-one mentorship relationship with NW student. But rather we want to see this as a building block of a network of mentorship program. And as we mature into the process, we can then start to look at what we're saying, adopt a graduate, a student to be a one-on-one advisory. Mentoring relationship is more around the development of our young people professionally. And as we were really looking at this initiative of mentorship as we enhance, we wanted to look at student or young people, graduates who are more high performing academically. But again, it's something that will also limit us in terms of the impact that we make. And for now, we will focus on those who are available, our students who are available to also benefit from this initiative. And the bigger objectives around mentoring program is that we are looking at something that will ultimately be a structured program, something that will be sponsored and supported by all the stakeholders, that is the mentee and the mentors, taking on the responsibility for a professional growth by committing their time and the effort that are needed to achieve a successful mentorship relationship. Our students and graduates who are mentees who seek the opportunities to improve their professional career. The mentees who demonstrate good academic performance, skills, competence, and confidence. But again, this is just an ambition. We cannot be limiting ourselves to those who are readily skilled or those who are highly performing in their academic studies. A pool of NW alumni who are available to fulfill the roles of being a mentor to NW students and graduates, a mentoring program with a focus on developing NW graduates and students towards attracting a career opportunity and also retaining the opportunity once they get the opportunity and further developing to become an experienced professional. Now, what are the benefits of this mentoring? In our eyes, we see this as an opportunity to improve confidence, self-esteem of our students and graduates. We also see this as an opportunity to enhance their motivation to take action towards their career progression. We also see this as an opportunity for our students to also improve their understanding of the world of work. We see this as an opportunity to develop new insight and ways of search and preparing for job opportunities, providing an opportunity to receive safe and supportive feedback, providing an opportunity for NW students to reflect on and plan their career development. In summary, the benefits to the mentee, that is our student, our graduate, is that they will gain knowledge and competencies, skills related to work readiness and professional experience. There will also be an increased potential for career progression towards attracting career opportunity as they interact with the mentors, either as employed or those who are self-employed to be entrepreneurs. We see this also as a supportive space for young people in which they can feel supported to achieve their professional career success. We also see this as a networking opportunity for our young people to interact with senior, experienced, knowledgeable professionals in the industry. And lastly, our mentors. We've said a lot about the mentees and how they can benefit, but there's also an opportunity for professionals who are experienced to also shape their knowledge and experience to a different direction. It's an opportunity to test their new ideas and gain new knowledge, improve skills to share experience, knowledge, and competencies, challenging discussion with people who have fresh perspective. We all know that young people, they've got new way of looking at things. Giving yourself your own time as a positive contribution to the society, to support professional growth of the youth. As we take this initiative forward, if you want to be part of us, we do have a project champion. The details are indicated there. You can be in touch with our project champion, Ms. Nicolis van der Walt, nicolis.vanderwalt@nwu.ac.ca, to be part of this life-changing and developmental opportunity of our young people. In closer, colleagues, I'll leave you with a quote by Nelson Mandela. As he said, as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. With that, I thank you.
The acting president of NWU Convocation, Mr. Nkosinati Tom, will give us vote of thanks. Mhlekazi.
Thank you very much, leadership. Colleagues, please allow me to say leadership, you know. That is the language that we are using, as Professor Mohale has indicated, that we are actually surrounded here by leaders. And I've got a very difficult task, especially after such an excellent presentation that we have received. So I wouldn't want to spoil that, because I think we've got a lot to reflect on. And I'd prepared a 10-pager, but I don't want to stand between you and the networking session and the dinner. But I want to open up with a quote that says, you know, the strength of a nation lies not only in the wealth of its economy, but in the well-being of its people. And I think these words resonate quite well with what Prof. Mohale said. It continues to say, when we tackle unemployment, we do not just fix the economy, but we restore hope, dignity, and the livelihoods to countless families. And please accept my apologies for not following the protocol and acknowledging everyone. Just want to say, I know this sounds like a cliche, but all protocol observed, so that I do not miss anyone. So I want to take this opportunity to firstly thank Professor Mohale. Yes, your presentation, I think, has touched many of us here in so many ways. And I want to say that your presentation was so African. There's nothing un-African about it, because we could resonate with you in so many ways. And just on behalf of the Convocation Exco and on behalf of the university, we just want to say to you, thank you very much for coming through and honoring this engagement and sharing so much wisdom. And I'm actually very happy to see that there were even interactions online, because quite often we perceive technology as just a tool where people will just connect and not interact. But we found one of the critical comments that came from, I think, I suspect is one of our academics, with a very, very, very important question that they asked. So I can almost assure you that we have impacted many lives, and we hope that this can spread. Yeah. Can you please give him a round of applause, please, colleagues? Let me also take the opportunity to thank Mr. Mahlangu, the Ndebele guy, a very difficult man. You know, he's young, but he's very difficult for his age. Who is really a visionary leader and who persisted. I think President and Chairman Bert can attest to this, that, you know, this guy with public lectures, Mr. Manuku, is very, 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 very serious. And he does not bring just lightweight people, he brings giants. And Bongani, we just want to say thank you very much. Firstly, for your stubbornness. I think it works sometimes. For your stubbornness, but the passion that you have. You know, I thought I am very learned until I learned about the term underemployment. Then it's a bit embarrassing that I only learned when we started with the EXCO, because we always spoke about unemployment and we never said anything about underemployment. And I think we all have a responsibility in our respective spaces as leaders to actually take hands with individuals such as Comrade Mahlangu. He's a comrade also. So can you please give him a round of applause, please? I also want to ensure that I do not miss to thank the chairman of council, who is actually the guy who has given me the baton, Mr. Berso Dracher. I think, President Bert, I want to thank yourself, but collectively with the Convocation Exco, for us to not lose the momentum. We are actually the first and the most diverse Convocation Exco, and engaged as well. You look at age, we've got a multi-generational convocation. You look at gender, please don't, can all the members of the Exco please stand? I want to say something, but I just want to give evidence. Can you please stand, including the chairman, Bert, please, if you can just stand. Yeah. I want us to thank them. Please do not think that it's a gentleman's team only. We've got 3 ladies who could not make it. So I just want to mention that we've got our 3 other members who could not be with us today because of other pressing engagements. I'm sure they are connected online. So we're quite diverse also in terms of gender and also in terms of perspectives and all that. So colleagues, thank you very much for your contribution. And then Mr. Manoku and the team. You know, I always share this story, and please accept my apologies if I'm repeating it again. Chairman Bert will tell you that we attended an engagement with other 26 universities at UJ, where they said to us that, listen, we don't have a structure like we have. And I think at the Northwest University, we are really privileged to have a team that is supporting us under the leadership of Mr. Manoko. But also, the university management that comes to us to listen to your concerns as the alumni and as convocants. They're always responsive. Even if we ask for reports, they write those reports. Why? Because there's accountability. And I really want to thank Mr. Manoko and the leadership of the university as well. Can you please give them a round of applause? Now, this included the organizing team and the supporting team from CRM. But colleagues, I actually want to now take this opportunity to also thank you for taking the time. I know that some of you, I mean, you know, we are well represented. We've got guys, Mr. Tabile, all the way from Volmar, Randstad, Sassolbeck. You know, some of us from Joburg, close to where the guys are in Stilfontein. Yeah? Yeah? Pardon? I don't know. I can't comment on that. Yeah, but I just want to say, colleagues, really thank you so much. I think we can all agree that this was quite an insightful engagement. And I just want to implore each and every single one of you to really take hands with us and partner with us. You know, I met the leader there right at the corner there today, and he was saying to me, he was quite persistent to say, I've engaged the university previously to want to partner so that I can contribute towards the greater cause that the university is actually driving in impacting lives. And we want to ask that you please, join us, join our hands. We've got quite a number of programs. I think Mr. Mahlangu has mentioned quite a number of those programs, but they are a handful for the need that we have. So we are looking forward to the engaging session. Prof. Mohale, before we close the session, we've got a small token here, and I've not been tasked, but I've been mandated. I've been given a very clear instruction, and President Ber, if you can join in, Mr. Mahlangu, please, because Mr. Mahlangu, you're the project manager of this thing, so that we can then collectively hand over this gift to Professor Mohale. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Okay, we are at the end of our program. As individuals, we have lots of problems. As universities, we have lots of problems. As a country, we have massive problems. but our solutions may be lying in our individual capacity and capability to say, as an individual, what is the small contribution I can make today and tomorrow? In the beginning, it may seem like nothing. In the long term, it may be something. For example, we have students, as Prof. Mohale has indicated, who are struggling with a whole lot of things. In February, we'll be receiving new students, about 11.8 of them on our campuses. Some of them are coming from communities and schools where they don't have anyone to talk to. It's a new environment that they come in, and bright students, but some of them will fail because they are not integrated properly. And not because the university is not doing something, but because the information flow and the confidence that on their part is lacking. Therefore, if we were to say, broadcast as the communication people, to say, hey, we have people who you can talk to as an individual, because firstly, because they lack confidence, they cannot step up to say, I need help. They stuck in their rooms, in their corners until it's June. They realize they haven't passed a module. So please avail yourselves. We are going to introduce, as Toriso has presented here, a program where online you can indicate that I'm available for a week, for a whatever. Sometimes you don't need to talk to them the whole year. Just once, you change their lives. Please avail yourselves. You don't have to be waking, because sometimes it's just the experiences that you go through to say, this is what I went through. Please be careful of that and this and that. And you change somebody's whole life, their families, and so on. Please, let's do that. And dinner is served. It's a buffet, I'm told. Yeah, Renee, thank you very much, everyone. Have a safe trip back to destinations where you are. Let's continue talking, sharing ideas. You can, of course, come to our classrooms to share your experiences and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.